edition of the Israel Institute for Torah Studies Discipleship Training Program. Last week we were on the parashot, or lesson 26, which is entitled Sheminai, and this week Yahweh is just moving through progression. This week we are going to be going into the parashot that is entitled Tazri-a. Alright, and so if you know of anyone who is pregnant, if you know of anyone who has just given birth, then you definitely will want them to be a part of this teaching presentation, because we're going to be going into some principles that are definitely going to be a blessing to our expecting mothers, or our mothers, or those persons who just became mothers. Alright, so we are looking at Tazri-a, and we're going to be going deep into the word of Yahweh. I want to thank those of you who have been sending us their emails, who have been leaving words of encouragement and words, comments, and words of as it relates to what else we can do to make this presentation much better. I want to say that at this time that there's nothing that we can really do about the videos and the speed at which the videos are playing, because of the program that we're using, or because of the speed of the machines that we are using. Then that is the reason why the videos are the way they are. And so that is the reason why we need your support. We need to really get equipment to make this teaching presentation as seamless and as presentable as possible. But for the time being, we're going to work with that which Yahweh has given unto us. And so that is the reason why it is important for us to show your support by going on our website, and if you look on that page that is entitled Watch Videos, at the bottom of that page we give you instructions as to how you can basically help financially this ministry, so that we can continue to do what we are doing, and also so that we can improve on that which we are doing. But I want to thank you for your prayers. I want to thank you for your words of encouragement. I want to thank you for your recommendations, and as Yahweh gives us the resources to improve, then we are going to do so. And we encourage you to continue to pray for us. We encourage you to continue to work with us, to partner with us in getting this Torah compliant message out there. And so I want to thank those of you who have actually gone ahead to send this link to their friends, and I hope and pray that they will continue to do the same. Alright, so we're on the topic Tazri-a. Alright, and it is taken from the book of Leviticus, or Vayikra, chapter 12 verse 1 through to chapter 13 verse 59. And as is usual, here are the breakdown of the different chapters as it relates to our outline. Alright, so chapter 12 we've entitled Principles of Childbirth and Post-natal Care. Chapter 13 we have entitled Principles for Discerning Leprosy. Alright, so let's at this time go down into our lesson outline so that we can see what it looks like. So Vayikra, or Leviticus chapter 12, has only 8 verses. So it is the principles of childbirth and postnatal care, and here is the outline for chapter 12. Yahweh gives instructions concerning the male child. Verses 1 to 4. Yahweh gives instructions concerning the female child. Verses 5 rather. Instructions concerning childbirth purification. Verses 6 to 8. Here are the suggested questions, and just want to remind you that we are doing these lessons for 2 main reasons. One is for those brethren, those persons who have accepted the faith, and we have a lot of persons who are coming into faith with Hamashiach because of these telecasts, and this is happening not only in Jamaica but is happening around the world. And so we do these lessons because in some cases, in many cases, it is only 1 from a household or 2 from a city. And so we want to ensure that these young believers are being fed the word. And so these teaching discipleship training presentations are designed for those persons so that they can actually be a part of our program. They can be on the same page. They can follow the same schedule that we are following. So basically, they are functioning as an extension of our physical congregation here in Jamaica. All right. The next reason is that there are a number of these brethren, in some cases the group has grown to a size that there are enough persons in a particular geographical location who can begin to meet. And so these materials are designed in such a way where a facilitator or a cell group leader can use the material to lead group sessions, and in the same way they function as extensions. And so our prayer is that if you have come into faith, or if you would like a group to be organized in your area, that you call us or email us, and we'll be glad to lend our support in any way that is possible. All right, here are the suggested question. What is the meaning of the word Tazri-a? Why does Yahweh give instructions for separation? How long is the time of separation for a male child? How long is the time of purification for a male child? How long is the time of purification for a female child? How long is the time of separation for a female child? And based on the lesson, what are the two types of immunity, and how can we relate to them spiritually? All right, now let's look at the terms that we're going to be looking at in this Yom's teaching presentation. All right, so we have Tazri-a, which means leprosy. Brit Milah, which means covenant of circumcision. Tumay or Tamay, and we spell it Tum-ay or Tamei. It really doesn't matter, because in any case, in the Hebrew form, we are not so much arguing the spelling but the pronunciation. So whichever of those spellings would help you to pronounce the word properly. So it is Tumay, all right, and it means to be physically defiled, to be common, to be regular, to be unclean, or to be sick. And then we have the word Nida, which means menstruous woman. And so that's the basically the information, pre-study information that you will need, so that you can understand the vocabulary of what we'll be sharing on this Yom. I know that as you are involved in these teaching presentations, that your Hebraic vocabulary is growing. And friends, brothers and sisters, that's our goal. We want to, as much as is possible, allow the diaspora, allow Israel that has been scattered in the four corners of the earth, to begin to become intimate with our mother tongue, with our language once more. And so I pray that that also has been or is being a blessing to you. All right, so we're going to go right into our teaching presentation this Yom. All right, let's look at the passages. So Tazri-a, or leprosy, this is a topic that many may not find comfortable, because it discusses the issues of menstruation and other bodily discharges. However, just like how in creation week Yahweh made it possible, whereby he made the animals first, or the beast, both the Tumay or Tahor, and there's a mistake, it actually should be Tumay. So Tumay, which means clean, and Tahor, unclean. In the same way, Yahweh discusses the state of man just after he discusses the state of the animals. So we see an order here, just like how in creation week Yahweh made the beast of the earth, and then afterwards that crowning, if you want a use of the word glory, that crowning of creation was when Yahweh made man. In the same way, Yahweh discusses, and if you were a part of our teaching presentation last week, Sheminai, we looked at how Yahweh spoke about the responsibilities as it relates to the priests, those persons that will be ministering in the temple, and as well as the furnitures, those instruments that will be integral in the use of worship. Then Yahweh shifts his focus to the physical temple, and then Yahweh speaks about the order and the protocols of worship, and then Yahweh moves into not the physical building temple, but he begins to look at the spiritual body temple. And so we see a progression here in the chapter that we're now looking at. We see how Yahweh follows that same pattern, just like how he created the beast and then he created man as a crowning, or as a crown of his creation. We see how last week in Shemini we spoke about the animals. In chapter 11 we spoke about the beasts, those that are clean and unclean, and now Yahweh begins to speak now about human being or mankind and how they can become defiled, and so on and so forth. Alright, so let's look at our notes. One of the most awesome experiences in the world that has been bestowed upon a woman is the privilege of nurturing and bringing forth life into the world. And so, you know, in the time that we are now in, people, it's as if women have to apologize for being feminine, because femininity is looked upon as a weakness. And this is just so sad, because Yahweh had mankind both as male and female, and he took that feminine part of man out and made a separate human being, and so we have the womb man. And so there's nothing wrong in celebrating one's feminineness. That's how Yahweh made you, and so being feminine is a gift of Yahweh. And so you should not think of being feminine as being weak. It has nothing to do with being weak or strong. It is just nature that Yahweh puts inside the female that allows them to be excellent nurturers. Alright, so let's look at our first scripture verse. It says, Yahweh gives instruction concerning the male child, verses 1 to 4. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 yamams, or 7 days, according to the days of the separation. For her infirmity shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall then continue in the blood of her purification 33 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are fulfilled. And so, Yahweh gives instruction, not arbitrarily, but every one of Yahweh's instructions are given for a specific purpose. Because how many persons know that Yahweh is an Elohim of detail? It is a fact that Yahweh pays attention to detail, while we are unique in every respect. Alright, so Yahweh is an Elohim of detail, and whenever Yahweh gives an instruction concerning something, you better believe it that this is something that is important. Alright, so Yahweh gives instruction, and we're going to be going into those instructions to look at what those instructions are and to look at what those instructions mean. So the period of separation is a boundary to protect. When Yahweh begins to create, then Yahweh separates. As I said before, that this is maybe one of the most uncomfortable topic to teach on, and I know many ministers, a lot of ministers that shy away from it. But it's really because they don't understand the blessing that is inherent in these principles. Yahweh is an Elohim of separation. The minute Yahweh begins to create, Yahweh separates, because it is in his nature. That word separate is where we get the word Kodesh, or holy, from. Yahweh is separate. In his nature, Yahweh is another element of ambiguity or gray area. Yahweh separates right from wrong, because there are only two realms, the realm of life and the realm of death. And so Yahweh is an Elohim who separates. Yahweh does not believe or condone being in the gray area. And so that separation was a boundary. And we need to understand that a boundary is designed to protect. Yahweh does not just introduce laws or introduce rules or give instruction because he just wants to make another law. No. Every single instruction that Yahweh gives, he gives because he is setting a boundary. That boundary that he is setting is to protect those that are within the boundary. And so let's look at what Yahweh is protecting us from. Let's look at why Yahweh sets these boundaries. When a woman is in a time of her flow, she is very vulnerable because death is leaving her body. This is evidenced in the fact that no woman can go through menstruation without not feeling ill. Alright, and so Yahweh says that the woman ought to be separated because she is in a time of vulnerability. In other words, when a woman is in her flow, she is releasing death from her body. And I always try to explain that death is a breaking down process, whereas life is a building up process. So life is a building up process because we all started out when two separate cells came together and they began to multiply. So it's a building up process, and that building up process will continue until we reach an age or a stage in life where the breaking down process will be much more than the building up process. In other words, while we are alive, death is still taking place in us. So as I said, that life is a building up process. Cells are continuing to be replenished. That's why we are alive. They are being replenished and replaced. That is what causes us to be alive. But while we are alive, death is taking place. So there are some cells that are dying in us. However, we are going to reach a stage in life when the cells that are dying are going to outnumber the cells that are being replenished or repaired or reproduced. As a result of that, the process of death will be speeded up, whereas the process of life will be slowed down. And when we understand that principle, we understand therefore that there are things that we can do to speed up death, and there are things that we can do to slow down death. In other words, if you are not eating properly, if you are not getting your rest, if you are not exercising, if you are not fulfilling these requirements of the Torah, then what is going to happen is there are cells in your body that are going to be dying much faster than the cells that are being repaired. As a result, death in you is going to be speeded up. And so once we understand that, now during menstruation, those cells that came into the woman's womb are those eggs that came and were ready to be fertilized, that were not fertilized, they died. And so because they died, that issue that is leaving a woman's body is dead cells. It is impurity that has to be passed out of that woman's body. And so because she is losing dead cells, those cells that are in that blood can contaminate, can spread infection. And so because the woman's body is in a process of breaking down, then it is very vulnerable. And so because it is vulnerable, it is easy for her to take up infection. And in a natural sense, when a woman is going through that flow, then doctors or health care professionals will tell her that she has to exercise extreme care as it relates to hygiene, because her body is very vulnerable. And so Yahweh says that she must be separated, because Yahweh sets that boundary to protect the woman that is in that state of vulnerability. Not only is she vulnerable in a physical sense, but she is vulnerable in a spiritual sense, because whenever blood is involved, blood is the currency of the kingdom. And so whenever blood is being spilled, it attracts spirits. And so when a woman is losing blood from her body, she is spiritually vulnerable and is susceptible to demonic or spiritual attack. So for these reasons and for these purposes, that is one of the reasons why Yahweh says that she must be separated. She must be protected. The word Tazri-a tameh literally means to be sick. She is sick. She is in a state of being sick, and so she has to be protected. Not only must she be protected, but those that are healthy must also be protected. And so Yahweh says that if she has any contagious situation or sickness or disease that can be passed on through body fluid, what can happen is that that body fluid can come in contact with somebody that is healthy, and that healthy person becomes sick. So Yahweh says, separate clean from unclean, or tameh from tahor. No, that word clean in our English understanding would mean being filthy or not being filthy. The word clean from the word tameh or tahor has nothing to do with being dirty. It basically has to do with a spiritual state. It has to do with being sick and not sick. And so Yahweh says that we should separate those that are sick from those that are healthy, because those that are sick are in a vulnerable state, and those that are healthy can become sick. And so that's what that separation is about, not only for its hygienic reasons, but Yahweh is an Elohim. He says, I am an Elohim of the living and not of the dead. And so because those eggs that were not fertilized are dead, Yahweh says that we must separate death from life. Alright? So being tameh has nothing to do with being dirty, because Yahweh does not scorn. Alright? Yahweh says that he doesn't walk with the proud or the scornful. So it has nothing to do with scorning somebody. Alright, let's look at our next set of notes. 7 days of separation and 33 days of purification is designated for boys, whereas 14 days of separation and 60 days of purification is designated for girls. Alright, so 7 days of separation and 33 days of purification is designated for boys, whereas 14 days of separation and 60 days of purification is designated for girls. Now, I know a lot of persons will want to try to jump on this to say that Yahweh is a sexist, or Yahweh is gender biased. It has nothing to do with being gender biased. It's just that what happens during pregnancy is that when a woman is pregnant, if that woman is pregnant with a female child, then there is going to be a higher level of estrogen in that woman's body. Whereas if she is pregnant with a male child, there is going to be a lower level of estrogen. Now, estrogen is a female hormone. You have the sexes, male and female. Progesterone, or testosterone, sorry, is the male hormone. When a woman is pregnant, it requires a lot of that hormone to produce a male child. Testosterone is what is responsible for the male, is what is responsible for male characteristics. So testosterone is what male child will have in a stronger level. Estrogen, however, is what will be more dominant if that woman is pregnant with a female child. And so what happens medically, and this has been proven medically, is that when a woman has a male child, because there is a lower level of estrogen, then what happens is that her blood flow stops much earlier than when she has a female child. So when she has a female child, because of the large amount of estrogen, then her blood flow will continue up to 14 days. When it is a male child, then her blood flow will only continue up until 7 days. And so, Yahweh in his wisdom gives these instructions. Alright? Now, it is important for us to understand that during this period of separation, there are 7 days of separation for boys, and there are 30 days of purification. So 7 and 30 is equal to 7 days of separation and 33 days of purification. So 7 and 33 is 40. So in all is a period of 40 days. Now after the separation, that mother on the 8th day comes out of her separation, even though she has to go through 33 days of purification, but she is able to come out of that 7 days of separation to be with that child when that child is going to be circumcised, because it is a joyous occasion. Whereas for the girls, it is 14 days for separation and 60 days for purification. Alright, so the estrogen level is one of the things that is responsible for that. And so that is the reason why Yahweh gives command and instructions for that. Now, the covenant of circumcision. The covenant of circumcision, or Brit Milah. This is when the male child receives his name on the 8th day, or on the 8th yom. And so what happened is that that child is, after he comes out of the period of, notice it is a period of 7 days or 7 yomams, because 7 is a number of completion. And there is something that is happening within this 7 days period that you need to understand on not only a physical level but on a spiritual level. You need to understand there's a statement that says that he who rocks the cradle rules the world. He who rocks the cradle rules the world. And women, in this teaching presentation, you're going to understand the awesome power that Yahweh has entrusted to you. Many of you do not know the responsibility that lies in your hand, that lies in your lap. And so a lot of you, because of ignorance, the enemy is using you to contribute negatively to our children. And so this yom, we want to go right into that. Why is it that statement, it says he who rocks the cradle rules the world? All right, we're going to look at that in this teaching presentation this yom. Now, the child gets an opportunity to bond with its mother. 7 days for the completion to take place. She is not even to have relation with her husband. No one should be allowed to touch that child but the mother. While the physical umbilical cord has been severed, a spiritual one is being formed. Now, you need to understand, women, if you are pregnant and you have not yet given birth, if you have just given birth, you need to understand that during that first 7 days, that physical umbilical cord has been severed. That physical umbilical cord has been cut. But during that 7 days, Yahweh is establishing a spiritual umbilical cord. In other words, Yahweh is creating an umbilical cord that will allow you to be attached to that child forever. And so it is important that that woman is placed in separation. Yahweh has set that boundary for that woman to be in separation, for that bond to take place with that mother and that child. That woman is not even supposed to have relation with her husband. She is supposed to be bonding with that child. And that is one of the reasons why if you are pregnant, you should not just brethren from the assembly and family members will be coming to look for you in that hospital. They should not be allowed to touch your baby. You don't know what type of spirit is on them. You don't know where they're coming from. And so you need to understand that the devil or the enemy attacks us in our weakest state. And there is no other weaker state that we can be in than when we just enter the world. For that first 7 days, you need to ensure that you are the only one that touches your child. The Torah is we are talking this year about the principles of childbirth and post-natal care. These are principles that I challenge you are going to change your life forever. And so when you have just given birth, as best as you can, let it be known to your family members, let it be known to the brethren of your assembly that you don't mean to insult them, but it's in the word that you should be separated. So the only person that really should be touching that child is you, the mother, because that touch is going to create that bond that will last for a lifetime. That is the reason why even if you are in your 50s and your mother is in her 80s and there is something happening to you or you are going through some stuff, your mother can stay wherever she is and literally feel what you are going through. Why? Because there is a spiritual umbilical cord that is attached to you. And so we're going to be going into the word of Yahweh. We're going to be understanding the power of this umbilical cord. You're going to be understanding why it is so important for that mother to be with that child. And so, it's not a means of insult, but it's important. While she is breastfeeding and her womb is healing, she is becoming one with that child. That's why when something happens, as we said before, to that child, the mother feels it in her belly bottom or where her womb is. Now, during the period of breastfeeding, that first 7 days of breastfeeding, that child, notice it says 7, and we know that 7 is a jubilee. That 7 days, and I know social scientists, and I know that, psychologists will tell us that a child's personality is fully developed by the age of 7. 7 again is a jubilee. But before that second jubilee of 7 years, there is a first jubilee of 7 days. So the 7 years has to do with the physical personality of the child. But that first 7 day has to do with the spiritual personality of the child. And so in the first 7 days, where the child's spiritual identity is being formed, during that period when that mother is breastfeeding, while you are feeding that child, this is when you should be praying. This is when you should be decreeing and declaring the will of Yahweh over that child. This is when you are supposed to be praying prophetically over that child. And a lot of women don't know what I'm saying to you. And that is the reason why the world is how it is. A lot of you sisters that are in ignorance, it was during this time that of breastfeeding, during these 7 days of breastfeeding, that your child may be the way he or she is because of who came and handled her or him, who touched him. It may have been what you were thinking about, the stresses that you were going through while you were breastfeeding. Were you bitter? Were you angry? These things that you were experiencing, you were passing on to that child during the first 7 days of the child's spiritual personality being formed. So it's important for you to understand the principles of childbirth and postnatal care. And so Yahweh has put in his plan principles that literally can determine how a mother can impact a child. Hence, she who rocks the cradle rules the world. And we're going to be seeing how powerful that is as we go into as we go deeper into our lesson. Now I want you to look at this particular chapter, and this is just so profound. This is just so profound. The scripture says in Jeremiah 9 verse 7, and I've entitled it, Attention, Weeping Women Needed. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Consider ye and call for the mourning women, that they may come, and send for cunning women, that they may come. And let them make haste and take up a wailing for us, that our eyes may run down with tears and our eyelids gush out with waters. For a voice of wailing is heard out of Zion. How are we spoiled? We are greatly confounded, because we have forsaken the land, because our dwellings have cast us out. Yet hear the word of Yahweh, O ye women. And let your ear receive the word of his mouth. And teach your daughters wailing, and that every one her neighbor lamentation. Now, there are some things that we can go through. There are some stuff that we can go through. Israel was in a state of total decline. The morals had gone. The spiritual essence, the character of leadership had gone. And so the state, the country and the state was in a time of all-time low. And when a nation reaches that state, when a nation reaches that level, Yahweh says that you need to call for reinforcement. You need to call for those persons who rock the cradle and ask them to weep, because we need to understand, as I said before, that there is a spiritual umbilical cord that is attached to the mother of this nation. Or there's a spiritual umbilical cord of the nation that is attached to the mothers. And so Yahweh says, let the mothers begin to cry out. And so as the mothers begin to cry out, then and that says a number of things, because it can mean, one, that the children, the offspring of the mothers, are not in a state where they understand what is happening. They don't understand the consequences of their actions. And so Yahweh says, call for maturity, call for the nurturers of the nation, call for the mothers to cry out, and allow them to teach their daughters. Women, you don't understand how powerful you are. You don't understand that this nation is spiritually attached to the mothers of this nation. And so that is a power that is inherent in motherhood. Motherhood is an awesome power. It is an awesome privilege. It is an awesome responsibility that has placed into the hand of women. Sisters, you need to understand your role. You need to understand your purpose. That you are at the temple of Yahweh Elohim. That you bear a very powerful responsibility. And so Yahweh says, call for the weeping mothers. Call for the mourning mothers. Why? This just goes to show you how powerful mothers are. You know, men give strength to a nation, but women give spirituality. Women are the nurturers, and that is the reason why they are being targeted by the enemy. That is the reason why motherhood is under attack. That is the reason why when you look at our mothers, they are being ravished. Motherhood is being demoralized. Motherhood is being looked upon with such disdain. So many persons are ashamed to be mothers. So many women are ashamed to be mothers. But motherhood is an awesome privilege. It's an awesome opportunity. And so when we look at the responsibility that is placed in the hands of mothers, that is the reason why we have to be careful of what is happening to our young girls, because the young girls now, or the young girls of today, are going to be the mothers of tomorrow. And that is the reason why, so many, not only in Jamaica, but around the world. The scripture says, can a mother tender's love cease towards a child that she bears? There's an awesome responsibility that has been placed on mothers. I'm not talking, I want you fathers to get jealous, because we're not trying to compare here. We're looking on the principles of childbirth, and guess what? Fathers don't give birth. So we are looking on at this particular time the importance of women, or how motherhood is so integral in this nation. Now, it is important for us to understand, let the prophetic properties pass through your mammary glands into the DNA of your child. Whoever rocks the cradle rules the world. Whoever rocks the cradle rules the world. And so during that first 7 days, your responsibility as a mother is not only to breastfeed that child physically, but it is to pass on through your breast milk, through your mammary glands, the spiritual nurturing that will impact this child for the rest of their life. Notice that it is at the end of this 7 days period, 7 days where the child is not so much the physical breast milk, but the spiritual identity of the child is being formed. It is at the end of the 7 days period that for male child they are blessed or they are circumcised. This child, when they are being circumcised, is also when the child receives his name. And so the name would reflect the experience that took place during the first 7 days of breastfeeding. While that mother is declaring, while that mother is decreeing, while that mother is prophesying, many times Yahweh will allow that mother to be able to even see the identity, or to declare based on the declaration of the identity of that child, confer or proclaim or place on that child a name that is befitting of the spiritual identity, the purpose that child is going to be fulfilled. You know, we need to understand that we don't give children names based on fashion. We don't give children names based on trends. We give children names based on purpose. And, you know, principles of childbirth and postnatal care. Principles of childbirth and postnatal care. This particular parashot gives us the raw material to understand how to influence a nation. I'm praying and I'm believing Yahweh that at the end of this teaching presentation, if you are pregnant, if you just gave birth, that your child is going to benefit from this teaching presentation, that you are going to be blessed and benefit from this teaching presentation. Because too many times the enemy controls our children the minute they are born. The minute they enter the world in that vulnerable state. Instead of prophesying and declaring positive things, that's when the mother who is upset with the father or upset with somebody, that's when that mother passes on those negative tendencies, those negative feelings, those negative characteristics to that child. That's when the enemy, because of ignorance, sends all type of persons coming out of the bed of fornication, coming out of the bed of adultery, persons with lying spirit, persons with cheating spirit. That's when the enemy will send them to touch your baby. And so transference takes place. And you're wondering, you know, why is this child like this? Where did these tendencies come from? Well, when that child entered the portal of the world and was very vulnerable, you didn't understand the protocols, the principles of childbirth. And so the enemy came in and sowed tears. But if this has happened to you, do not throw your arms up in the air. I want to share with you that Yahweh still can intervene. Alright? Yahweh still can intervene. Because is there anything too difficult for Yahweh? No. So I want to share with you, and at the end of this particular teaching presentation, I'm going to be praying for you mothers, I'm going to be praying for you children, and I'm going to believe Yahweh for those curses to be broken. If this, if what I'm teaching on describes you or your child, then I want you to stay tuned for the completion of this teaching presentation. We want to pray with you and break those strongholds. And so it is very important for us to understand, brothers, that's why you have to know who you are getting pregnant. You cannot just go there and just see any girl and just get them pregnant. You have to understand that that mother is going to be the mother of your child. And so if you go out there and get a girl that is irresponsible, a young sister who has not yet come into the understanding of her purpose and her calling, who doesn't understand the virtues of motherhood, who doesn't understand the responsibility of motherhood, then you are jeopardizing your child and your child's welfare. And so you shouldn't just seek a mother purely on the basis of her outward appearance, but it is important for us to understand. And that's why the scripture says, you know, that the older mothers teach. These lessons that I'm teaching to you are things that the mothers in the assembly should teach their children. Principles of childbirth. Before a girl becomes ready to have a child, she needs to understand these principles, because she needs to be prepared for motherhood. You know, Yahweh wouldn't, you know, I've heard it that we are not prepared for motherhood or fatherhood. I mean, we cannot be sufficiently prepared, but surely such an awesome task or responsibility could not be left to chance. So those persons who have the philosophy that we are not prepared for parenthood, it's because you're not reading the Torah. Because Yahweh prepares us. Yahweh gives instructions and commands that relates to every sphere of our lives. And so the principles of childbirth are set because Yahweh says, lo, children are the heritage of the earth, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. In other words, the word generation comes from the word gene. The word gene, you know, we are the genes of Yahweh. So every child is literally a child of Yahweh. And so Yahweh could not leave such an awesome task, especially knowing that the enemy would attack us in that weak or vulnerable state. Yahweh would never leave us without instructions. And so the principles of childbirth are designed to bring us into that understanding. Alright, I want us to look now at Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2, verse 1 to 10. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to a wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off, to wait what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walking along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. The woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water. Now, this is a very typical example. The time was set in Egypt. A decree had gone out that all the firstborn male of a certain age were to be put to death because of the amount of children that were being born unto the Israelite people. However, Moses' mother hid him because she saw that if she didn't do so, he would have died. Even though she loved her son and wanted to grow him, she knew that to do so would mean that he would die. And so what she did was that she sacrificed her own feeling of belonging and being with her child for the life of her child. But let's see exactly what happens in this story. Now, as she's her sister says, I'm going to send it down, put it on the river to save the child. Pharaoh's daughter was coming to have a bath, and she saw the child, and she took the child, and she wanted to find out how she could nurse this child. And so the child's mother was contracted to nurse the child. Now, we're talking about breastfeeding. This mother, Moses' mother, would only spend a brief moment, a brief time with Moses. Only a brief time she would spend with him. The rest of his life he would spend in Potiphar's house. And so whatever she did, or she knew that whatever she did would set the foundation for this child's personality to be formed. And so she did not take it lightly. She didn't just see it as just growing a child, as growing a boy. No, she understood that she had a spiritual responsibility. One of our problems is that we look at children only in a physical sense and look at their physical needs. We need to understand that a child is both spirit, soul, and body. And if you are physically parenting that child is not being parented in a complete way. A child cannot be parented physically. So that child must also be parented spiritually. So a lot of us parent our children physically, but don't understand that there's a spiritual need that is there as well. And so if we're going to parent a child successfully, we have to parent that child physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Alright, so that child needs to be parented physically and spiritually. If you are parenting that child physically, then you are half parenting that child. That child needs physical and spiritual parenting, and so that is the reason why it is not good for parents to be sending their children off to service just to worship. It's good, but it's not the best, because that child needs to be parented spiritually. They need to see example. They need to see that example being set, so that they can follow not only in word but also in deed. Alright, so we're looking at the protocols of childbirth, or the principles, of childbirth and postnatal care.